All right. How are you, Clayton?
I'm doing awesome. Having a good time at this Avalanche conference and first time in Barcelona, so good times.
First time in Barcelona.
Yep.
Okay. Do you enjoy the weather?
Not so much. It's overcast.
Oh.
But aside from that, yes.
Oh, there's some.
I don't know. What's going on?
I don't know.
Testing. My battery's good. Wait, maybe if I just hold it closer. I think the voice isolation was cutting out.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you are not enjoying the weather. I can understand that.
But I appreciate that despite the cold, you're rocking your Superwoman shirt. just to make sure it's seen.
This is not endorsement. I wasn't paid for that. Please, could you introduce yourself? We already did an interview in Lisbon, but for technical reasons, the interview is still in the computer, so please.
I love that explanation. So my name is Clayton Roche. I'm the community lead at UMA, and that means I do a lot in the domain of supporting our DAOs, as well as a lot of the communications. So I'm in charge of a lot of the writing and messaging that comes out of UMA.
Okay. Well, let's go straight to the point. The interview is more about the DeFi ecosystems, the DAOs, and how come these two subjects can mix together to onboard and make people have a better way of living.
Okay.
So, in your opinion, how DeFi can lift 1 billion people out of poverty?
That's a familiar question. So, yeah, I did a little talk about this at ETH Denver. And it's a bold way to claim that, of course, to lift 1 billion people out of poverty. But I basically think that there's something special going on with DAOs and in DeFi generally about permissionless work, the ability to show up and provide value and receive payment for that, but in a way that presents such a lower barrier than we've seen before. Kind of like the lowest barrier permissionless work, it's not even permissionless, is like Amazon's Mechanical Turk, where you could show up and do tasks, or there's sort of similar things. But to actually participate in a community building a product like you can do in a DAO, I just think is incredible. The other thing going on in the space with regard to that question is the play-to-earn games. So a lot of those games have been really getting traction in places where they lack good opportunities. And so this comes from my personal experience. I was living in the Philippines, in the provinces, basically, during the COVID period. And there's just like a dearth of opportunity. There's really nothing to do to earn money there. But most people can still get a smartphone and they have what they need to do this stuff. And so over 1 million people onboarded into crypto because of Axie Infinity. And I think that's pretty incredible. And so there's these little glimmers of hope going around the space that I think are really promising, particularly when it comes to poverty.
Okay. It's really interesting. Could you talk about the economics and psychology of the community building a crypto ecosystem?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this is actually something
you are familiar too.
I shared a bit with my talk here today in Barcelona. So yeah, the thing that I really focus on in this topic is about well-delivered rewards. I think that people have a natural desire to just give out money to make things happen, but a community is not just people showing up to do tasks. Like that's a bounty board, right? That's a gig. That's like a very kind of dry transactional thing. A community is actually a set of relationships between the people that show up, and you can give away rewards in a way that actually helps build those bonds between people, and that's the thing that I've focused on. And so one example that I'd like to talk about is just the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So when you think about tasks that people are doing intrinsically, it might be just to be nice, or to be a good person, or to demonstrate their knowledge, or maybe to support the group of people they've become friends with. There's been some psychology studies about motivation where if you give people money to do something they already love, you actually reduce how much they love it.
Yeah.
And if you take away the money, they do it less than they did before you started paying them. And so that sort of squashes that intrinsic motivation. So I think of ways to basically give people pay. They still deserve pay, but you try to do it in a less transactional way. One of the ways that we found success doing that at UMA is by creating shared incentive programs. So the Super Umans is an example on your shirt there. The Super Umans are a group in our DAO ecosystem that receives tokenized KPI options. These pay out based on the result of a KPI that settles in the future. So it's a goal for the protocol. What that does from the psychology perspective is it gives these people a shared goal. So even though they're hustling for their own, they're going to get rewarded for their own financial purposes, but every win they have is a shared win. So every integration, they come back to the DAO and they're like, hey, I had a convo with this person, it's going really well, everyone's excited, and that builds that connection between the people. And I think that just gives a better foundation for what you want to see in a community, because you want people that genuinely love the protocol, not people who are doing a gig, because it's not really loyalty, right?
Yeah, but don't you think that originally people are greedy and just want to make profit? It's a way that we can see from all the NFTs project, when people try to get whitelisted, and different kind of DAOs that try to bribe people to offer them money and things like that.
Sure. I mean, I'm not denying that that's an important part. And in fact, like, financial incentives are the glue that holds together crypto in many ways, right? Like, that's why Bitcoin mining, proof of work mining works, it's financial incentives. But for almost everyone, particularly people who are building in the space, not necessarily mercenary value hunters, right, or airdrop hunters, but for people that are building in the space, there's kind of an underlying current of a value for a desire to actually make change. Yeah. And so it's got to be both things. I'm all about people trying to earn money, It's just finding a way to do it where those things work together, where it's values aligned and also profitable. Yeah. That I think is the art of it. I am perfectly guilty of going to chase after money opportunities because I think that they're there, right? And I have no intention of being a regular community member. I just want to hunt the airdrop or whatever. Yeah. Like, it can be both things. And one person's capable of doing both versions too. It's really just about incentives. What are the incentives? Do I think that people are profit maximizing and nothing else? No, I don't think you think that either.
Yeah. This is true. And in the meantime, there is. How could UMA bring new concepts to DeFi, such as enforcement and recurses?
Sure. So UMA is an optimistic oracle.
Yep.
It solves the oracle problem in a pretty different way than price feed oracles like Chainlink. It works differently, and the things it's good at are different. And so one of the things you mentioned is recourse, for example. UMA, kind of actually the founders of UMA really believed that the ability to have some sort of recourse, some sort of dispute resolution system and way to review what happened and undo it if necessary was essential. And they came from TradFi, they're Goldman Sachs executives, and they basically saw how many things can go wrong when a piece of data is pushed through. And it doesn't even have to be malice, it could just be an accident or an error. And we've seen this happen time and time again in crypto. The one that always comes to mind for some reason for me is Compound was reading their data from Coinbase's Oracle, and Coinbase accidentally reported that DAI was worth $1.30, and that caused $80 million in liquidation to Compound. And that's an example where no one was trying to do that. I don't think there was malice behind it, it was just an accident. And so UMA really takes the ability to have recourse as kind of the core of the design.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how it connects. And I think that it's just a question of like what's important to you. Like fast DeFi, the ability to do flash loans, for example, all of that stuff works pretty well with a price feed oracle like Chainlink. It's just that like things like this can happen. And so it's one of those trade-off questions. Where do you want to have trade-offs?
And don't you think that, well, you talk about flash loans and things like that, but don't you think that those kind of mechanics mechanisms, sorry, are too complicated for the, regular people, because we were talking about onboarding 1 billion people into crypto to develop their wealth. Those kind of mechanisms are pretty complex.
There's two things I would say. One is that, incidentally, UMA's financial products built with UMA are not susceptible to flash loans at all. So those people that we're speaking of wouldn't actually need to learn about flash loans. The other thing I would say is that when we're talking about 1 billion people, they aren't going to know about flash loans. They're going to have a UI that helps them understand. And so a great example would be, let's say somebody wanted to use MakerDAO and they minted DAI off of their ETH. You can use a flash loan, I'm pretty sure, to repay a leveraged position. But that would just be packaged underneath a button, right? That just says like exit position. So I mean, at the end of the day, they don't need to understand the mechanics underneath.
Okay, this is the power of UI. We can say that.
Yeah, we can say that. Just make sure you type the website name in correctly.
Why Web3 will need more than one type of Oracle services?
Yeah, so Web3 is many different things, and so I really kind of already touched on this with regard to like fast DeFi versus these kinds of other design projects, and so I can mention a few examples that we've been working on. But essentially, the reason it needs more different Oracle choices is just because, because the particular design is going to impact the stuff you can build successfully with it. Yeah. And so one example is the bridge across is built on UMA's optimistic Oracle. The way that works is it just, each time it asks whether the transaction was done successfully, it asks the Oracle that question. And the ability to ask that particular question, which is technically long-tail data, which an optimistic Oracle is very well suited to handle, that ability means you can build a cross-chain bridge, like across. And that's sort of what I'm speaking of, is this general idea that because we arrive at our data a different way, it means it has different pros and cons, basically. There is a time delay component built into UMA that is a bug in some use cases and a feature in other use cases. That's ultimately why, because we want to be able to build all of the cool things. The other reason I guess I would say is that, like, in UMA's case especially, the Oracle is particularly well suited to bringing off-chain data. Sorry, it's all off-chain data. That's the definition of an Oracle. Real-world data on-chain. And so one example of that is we sold insurance on a SpaceX rocket launch. Okay. And anyone who had a payload in that rocket could actually buy insurance. And the resolution of that required asking, did the rocket launch go successfully? That little yes-no piece of data, like, that would be difficult in a price feed design because you can't really build a feed for this one question, but it's really well suited to UMA's Oracle, where you can ask it what's called an arbitrary question and bring that data on chain. Okay.
Well, actually, it will be our last topic. I'm part of a DAO. You are part of a DAO. Could we talk about the future of works into DAOs?
Sure.
This is a pretty vast subject.
Sure, and I'm trying to think. It's funny because I just applied for the ETHCC speaker, and I think my topic was around the lines of, like, are DAOs like really permission, like a new form of human coordination, or is it just like bull market fireworks? Oh, like a little bit of me wants, like, so I'm like a perpetual pessimist in certain ways, in a useful way. Yeah. Pessimism as a service. Okay. It's like how I think of it. But essentially, like, I do want to make sure that I see DAOs like survive into a bear market. If people are still excited and working, then I'm going to be like, yes, this is it. Yeah. The other thing I would say is I don't think we've even begun to scratch the surface of what work in a DAO looks like. I think that we've often been trying to copy, like, traditional work into crypto versions in quite a lot of ways. Yeah. There's a lot of innovation, but there's also just, our default is just to copy what we've seen before. But this idea of, like, a new form of human coordination, this way that people can get banned from a DAO and reappear as a different anon, means essentially that reputation has to work a lot differently. And we can find ways to pair reputation with individuals, but at the end of the day, like there's a lot of different things going on, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. I'm not a prognosticator. However, like I didn't work in a corporate job for 10 years. I was e-commerce. I was a digital nomad. It's because I didn't have the desire or possibly the emotional intelligence to like buy a suit and go to work and jump through all the corporate hoops. There was all this talent just sitting idle, like my own, that's getting tapped into now because of DAOs and because of the crypto industry. That's really cool, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I think that there are weirdos like us that want to work online and want to have our flexible lifestyles and hide behind meme images and pseudonyms, and it's just part of being human, and you know.
Definitely.
Cool. That was a rambling answer, but that's what I got for you.
So you bet all your money on the future of work will be DAOs?
I bet a portion of it there, yeah.
A portion of it,
yeah.
Thank you very much, Clayton.
Thank you, Lamont. Cheers.
Very good.
Yeah.